What exactly is ESG? Well, ESG is a set of criteria used to evaluate the sustainability and the social impact of a business. When the company does things well, it can be good for the environment, for people, and the company itself. So when you think of E, it's environmental. That means taking care of the planet, things like recycling, using less energy, not polluting. When you think of the S, that's social, and that means treating people well by doing things like paying fair wages, being kind and respectful, and also helping others in the community. And when you think of the G, that's governance. And that means that the company is run well and fairly by following rules and being honest and transparent. Essentially, what ESG, and maybe as you hear me say those descriptions, those definitions, you're starting to think to yourself, oh, I could see where my community could potentially have a pass at ESG marketing. So, is ESG initiatives, are those important to our residents? Well, the reality is, residents, they want good prices for their rent, and that usually trumps almost anything else. But if there can be efforts where they're contributing to the environment, to social causes, to governance, to, give their money to companies that are trying to give back, there's a feel-good aspect. And you have to be very careful with ESG because specifically, there's a lot of backlash when companies try to greenwash, where they try to market like they are, focusing on ESG efforts, but it's all just for marketing. And TikTok, if you just look up like ESG scandals, you can see where people have exposed companies that just put labels on that make people think that they're good for the environment or that they're giving to social causes, but then they're really not living up to it. So whatever we do market for our community, we need to make sure that we're actually doing it. So what are the kind of things that we could talk about or that we could promote within our community that would be promotable as ESG friendly? I have a list here of a few things that would fall under these categories. So it's if your community is smoke free, providing good air quality, if you have energy efficient appliances, if you have water conservation efforts, could even be your landscaping, that you landscape with very like natural landscaping for your area that conserves water, LED and sensor lighting, bike sharing program. You can have social impact events, your gardens, biodiverse landscaping, like we talked about, a recycling area. So if you have a recycling program, composting, a donation program. So doing things like a garage sale or a resident swap, car charging stations or smart home technology, solar panels, or even sustainable art installations. So hopefully, as you're kind of hearing these things, you might think, I may not have all of those. I might not be one of these Class A luxury communities that I think of with ESG, but I have some of those. Maybe my location really fits, or we do events that help give back to the community, or we have a community garden. Now, when I talk about this, earlier we said, that for people, yes, many times price is the number one factor when choosing their home. But in marketing, it's all about stacking the deck, right? So for pet friendly, we talk about it not because every single potential resident is interested in having a pet or has a pet, but because it stacks it in our favor. So the more things that we can stack in our favor, like being pet friendly and showing that we are promoting ESG living, that just helps us in our marketing stack. And that's what this section is always for, is to just help us think of new ways, creative ways to appeal to our target demographic. So let's dig into these ideas a little bit more. We talked about hosting sustainable events. So this is things like maybe a recycling drive or a community garden initiative, or an energy conservation program. You might even have somebody local come in and talk about how people can conserve energy, or different ways that different things maybe people don't think of recycling. You can also highlight green spaces. So if you have a green space within your community or nearby, you can talk about how these spaces specifically can reduce stress and enhance the well-being of residents. There's the social impact, the S of the ESG. You can also, if your community was built with sustainable materials, you can showcase that. And this is especially important if you're a new construction. This could even be something that you promote in an email series to somebody that is on your wait list. You can also collaborate with local organizations. So maybe you don't have a ton of these things happening, but you are a part of organizations that are giving back. Maybe they're hosting different sustainable events and you're doing a donation or a green drive. You can then also partner their logo and say, this is where we contribute, or this is where we put our funds. And that's something good to look at your corporate office. Maybe they already are doing charitable donations, and that's something that you can include in your marketing. You can also provide residents with resources like downloadables, like things on how and what to recycle. What are some sustainable living tips? Different things about local transportation, ways that people can reduce that footprint. Here's a couple of stats that I think would be interesting to you guys. Energy efficient appliances can save residents up to 30% of their energy bill. So maybe for the marketing, they're not thinking, maybe they don't care about helping with ESG efforts. But if you tell them we have energy efficient appliances, and on average, according to the US Department of Energy, residents can save 30% off their energy bill, that is a savings that then you could multiply over 12 months and give them a potential average. Like, what would they do with that money instead? Implementing water saving fixtures and systems can save residents up to $350 per year on their water bill. And this is according to the EPA's Water Sense program. And then something totally in a different kind of direction is access to community gardens or other green spaces can lead to improved mental health outcomes for residents. And this is according to the University of Sheffield, a study that they did. So as marketers, we now take these statistics and we make them into marketing. You can talk not just about the actual ESG initiative or the feature, but what does it actually mean to the residents? What does saving $350 on their electric bill each year really mean for them, for their bottom line? What does them having access to a garden that they can take regular breaks at, what does that do for their mental health?
Okay, as I said, if you're a Spark member or an All Access member or a resident retention member, you all get access to the rest of that training inside of your membership. If you aren't a Spark member, you can go to sparkwithsprout.com to join for only $7 a month. You'll be able to get the 10-step strategy for marketing, retention, social media planning, and more, which make your life so much easier and give you a little bit of your time back. I hope you have a great rest of your week, and we'll see you next time.
All right, guys, that's a wrap on today's Multifamily Mix. Keep shaking things up at your community, your career, and most importantly, your life. Until we mix and mingle again, see you next week, friend.